If you had told me a year ago that my father, the man who once lifted me onto his shoulders so I could see fireworks above the crowd, would one day beg me to come home while standing in the cramped hallway of my brother's apartment, I would have said you were confusing us with someone else's family. But here we are. My name is Emma, I'm 17, and 2 months ago, my father actually hesitated, when his wife demanded that he choose between her and me. That single breath of silence was enough to break something I didn't even know could still break. I left that night with nothing but a duffel bag, my mother's old photo album, and the kind of numbness that feels like walking underwater. And today he showed up. I heard his knock before I saw him. 3 sharp taps, the same rhythm he used when picking me up from sleepovers when I was little. For a moment, my heart reacted before my brain could stop it. I opened the door, expecting, I don't know, a father who finally understood. But the man standing there was someone else entirely. His tie was loose. His eyes were rimmed red like he'd been fighting with himself more than with Lena, and his hands trembled just slightly when he tried to straighten his jacket. "Emma," he whispered, as if the word itself hurt. "Honey, come home, please. We can fix this." Behind me, Alex stepped closer. I felt the warmth of him at my back, the same protective presence he's been since the day Mom died. His hand hovered near my shoulder, not touching yet, but ready, always ready. Dad's gaze flicked to him instantly, something like resentment tightening his jaw. "This isn't your place, Alex," he said. "She's my daughter. She belongs at home." Home. The word tasted like dust in my mouth. I swallowed, feeling my pulse throb against my skin. "Dad, I'm not coming back." His face fell, the devastation raw, unfiltered, because he didn't know yet. He didn't know I had already transferred schools. He didn't know I had already built a new life. And he didn't know that the moment he hesitated in choosing me, he lost me. "Dad," I said softly, "I don't live there anymore." That was the moment everything shattered. If you want to understand how everything fell apart, you have to understand what came before Lena, before Zoe, before the rules and the silent wars and the way my father slowly drifted somewhere I could no longer reach. You have to understand us. Me, Dad, and Alex. The 3 people who somehow held each other together after cancer took my mother when I was 10. Back then, our house felt different. Even in the worst moments, even when the air smelled like hospital disinfectant and exhaustion, there was warmth. Dad wasn't perfect, but he tried. He cooked terrible dinners, burned pancakes every Sunday, and slept in a chair beside my bed the night after Mom's funeral because I was afraid to be alone. But the real hero during those years wasn't Dad. It was Alex. He was 15, just a kid himself, and yet he stepped into every gap Mom's absence left behind. He braided my hair on picture day. He helped me with math homework even when he didn't understand it either. He made me laugh every time I cried, usually by tripping over his own shoelaces on purpose or pretending to faint dramatically on the living room carpet. Our relationship wasn't just close, it was ours. A private little universe built out of inside jokes, whispered worries, and late-night conversations in the dark. Dad used to smile when he watched us. "You two remind me of your mom and me when we were your age," he'd say, always finding a way to laugh, even when the world is cruel. I think that's why I didn't see the shift coming. 2 years after Mom passed, Dad met Lena. She was polished, confident, a lawyer like him, with a sharp voice and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She had a daughter, Zoe, who was just a year younger than me, sweet, quiet, eager to please. At first, I tried. I really did. I wanted Dad to be happy again. I wanted a family again. But everything moved at a speed that terrified me. Dates turning into sleepovers, sleepovers turning into weekends away. And then one day, Dad sat me and Alex down and told us he was getting remarried. 6 months, that's all it took. I remember the wedding so clearly it still stings. The dress was itchy. The photos felt staged. And the whole time, I felt like I was watching someone else's life from the outside. Alex kept making silly faces at me during the reception to lighten the mood, something we'd done since we were kids, and that's when I saw Lena's expression for the first time. Disapproval. Ice cold and sharp. She pulled Alex aside and scolded him for being disrespectful. It was the first crack. Living with her was like living under constant evaluation. Suddenly, there were rules, curfews, chore charts, behavioral expectations, standards of proper femininity. Zoe thrived under it. I drowned. And Lena, she didn't just dislike my closeness to Alex, she seemed threatened by it. She made comments, at first subtle, then increasingly pointed. "You're too attached. It's not normal for siblings to act like that. You rely on him too much. Dad tried to mediate in the beginning, but every time Lena pushed back, he retreated. I could see it. The way guilt tugged at him, the way he softened whenever she invoked her struggles as a single mom, or the difficulty of blending families. A part of him wanted to honor his past. A bigger part wanted to keep peace in his new marriage. And slowly our home stopped feeling like mine. Alex remained my lifeline through all of it. He'd come over after college classes, sometimes still wearing his backpack, ready with a joke or a stupid prank to remind me that parts of our old life still existed. Even Dad would laugh. But Lena never did. By the time the Labor Day barbecue came, tension wasn't a storm anymore. It was the weather, ever present, ready to break open at any moment. Everything that happened afterward was inevitable. I just didn't know it yet. Looking back, the conflict didn't start at the barbecue. It started long before, quietly, subtly, like hairline fractures spreading beneath the surface of something you always assumed was solid. It began with the small things, small enough that if you weren't paying attention, you'd think they didn't matter. But I was paying attention, I always was. The first seeds of tension came the day Lena moved in. I remember standing in the hallway watching her carry in a stack of labeled storage bins while Dad, smiling nervously, said, "We'll make space. We're a family now." But making space apparently meant taking mine. She walked into my bedroom without asking and immediately scanned it like an interior designer surveying a client's home. This wallpaper is childish," she said, brushing her fingers across the butterflies Mom and I had chosen when I was 8. "We'll update this soon." I swallowed hard. Mom helped me pick that. Lena paused, then gave me a smile that felt like a pat on the head. "Well, you're older now. Time for more mature things." I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because Dad stood behind her, hopeful, trying so desperately to make this work. Then came the house rules, curfews I'd never had before, chore lists taped to the fridge, mandatory family time that felt more like performance than connection. Whenever I pushed back, Lena would sigh dramatically and say things like, "Emma, I'm trying to help you grow into a responsible young woman," or, "You can't rely on Alex forever." That last one became her favorite. It didn't matter that Alex was my brother, not some crutch. It didn't matter that he'd been the one steady part of my life after Mom died. To her, our closeness was a flaw, something to be corrected. Even Dad, who used to defend us, began to shift. One night, while doing homework, I overheard them in the kitchen. "Lena, you let her get away with everything. No wonder she runs to Alex every time she doesn't get her way. Dad." "It's not like that, Lena. She needs boundaries." Dad, quietly, "Maybe you're right." That was the first time I felt something sharp twist inside me. The first time I wondered if Dad would still choose us, his original family, when pressured. As months turned into years, the tension grew heavier. Lena criticized the clothes I wore, too casual, my friends, bad influence, and worst of all, the bond between me and Alex. Once, when Alex came over wearing a Superman costume just to make me laugh, a silly tradition we'd had since I was little, Lena didn't just frown, she erupted. "Alex, this is ridiculous. Emma is not a child anymore. Stop undermining my authority in this house." Dad tried to calm her. Alex apologized just to ease the atmosphere. But I saw it, the resentment in her eyes, the way she looked at me like I was a problem she needed to fix. After that, Alex visited less. Not because he loved me any less, but because every visit meant conflict. Every laugh we shared felt like a spark landing on dry grass. And Dad started choosing quiet over fairness, avoidance over protection. Little by little, I learned to hold my breath inside my own home. By the time Labor Day rolled around, everything was brittle. The three of us, Dad, Lena, and me, were living in a house filled with unspoken accusations, tight smiles, and the constant fear of saying the wrong thing. All it needed was the smallest push. One playful shove by the pool, one laugh too loud, one moment of joy that didn't fit Lena's version of family. And everything finally cracked open. Labor Day was supposed to be a good day. It used to be one of my favorite traditions, something Mom started years before she got sick. Our backyard would fill with the smell of barbecue sauce and charcoal, cousins running around with water guns, my uncles arguing over football, Alex showing off whatever stupid trick he'd learned that month. It was loud, messy, loving, ours. This year, it felt different from the moment I woke up. Lena had spent the entire morning pacing around the kitchen, directing Zoe to set tables, rearranging decorations, and snapping at Dad for putting the dip in the wrong bowl, for God's sake. She wanted perfection, something our family had never been built on. Dad kept glancing at me like he wanted to apologize but didn't quite have the courage. By the time guests started arriving, I could feel the tension humming beneath my skin. But then Alex walked in. Sunlight hit him from behind, making him look like every good childhood memory I ever had. He dropped his overnight bag, opened his arms dramatically, and said, "Where's my favorite troublemaker?" I hadn't even realized how badly I needed that until I felt myself smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in weeks. We fell back into our usual rhythm instantly. Inside jokes, light teasing, a bond effortless and familiar. And that, unfortunately, was the spark. Later that afternoon, we were all by the pool. Aunts sipping lemonade, kids shrieking on floaties, Dad grilling burgers, and Lena standing stiffly by the patio like she was inspecting the place for violations. Alex sat at the edge of the pool scrolling his phone, completely vulnerable. I crept up behind him quietly, biting down a grin. He sensed it a second too late. Don't even... I shoved him into the water before he could finish. A perfect splash. He surfaced with a gasp and laughed, slicking his hair back. "Oh, it's war now." I squealed and tried to run, but he was faster. He grabbed my ankle and yanked me straight into the water. We both came up laughing, the kind of laughter that shakes loose something heavy in your chest. And then, a voice cut through the air like a whip. "That is enough!" Everyone froze. Lena stood at the edge of the pool, arms crossed, so tight her knuckles were white. People turned. Conversations died. Even the kids quieted. "Alex!" she snapped. "What on earth do you think you're doing? You could have seriously hurt her." Alex blinked. "Lena, she pushed me first. We were just messing around." "Don't you dare make excuses," she hissed. "You're an adult. She's still a child." My face burned. "I'm 16, not 6. And far too old for such childish behavior," she shot back without even looking at me. Guests shifted uncomfortably. Dad hurried over, spatula still in hand. "Okay, everyone, calm down." But Lena was far from finished. "You always act like this around her," she said, jabbing a finger toward Alex. "Always encouraging this immature, inappropriate dynamic. You undermine every rule I put in place. You make it impossible for me to maintain order in this house." Alex frowned, water dripping from his hair. "This isn't about rules, Lena. This is about you not liking that Emma and I are close." Her eyes flashed. "It's not normal for siblings to act like this." And something inside me snapped. "Mind your own business," I shouted before I could stop myself. "You don't get to dictate how Alex and I interact. You're not my mother." The silence that followed felt like the air had been sucked out of the yard. I saw it. The shock on my relatives' faces, the children staring, Zoe holding her breath, Dad going pale. Lena's jaw trembled with rage. "You ungrateful." "Enough," Dad cut in sharply. "We're ending this. Everyone, party's over." And that was it. Years of tension, insecurity, and resentment exploded across our backyard in 10 catastrophic minutes. That night, Dad came into my room. His face was tired, his voice measured, too measured. "Emma, you need to apologize to Lena." I stared at him. "For what? For defending myself? For having fun with my brother?" He rubbed his temple. "You embarrassed her, and me. You made a scene." "She made a scene. I pushed Alex first. We've done that a million times." "Emma, she's trying. She's your stepmother." "She's not my mother, and she never will be." Dad's shoulders sagged. Then I asked the question that had been rotting inside me for years. "Why don't you ever stand up for me, for us? Why is it always her?" He didn't have an answer. He didn't even try to give one. And that, more than the yelling, more than the party ending early, more than the embarrassment, was the moment something in our relationship finally cracked beyond repair. He left my room quietly. Nothing was resolved. Everything was worse. The real collapse hadn't happened yet, but the ground had already opened. After the barbecue, the house felt like a war zone where everyone had lost, but no one wanted to admit defeat. Lena didn't yell. She didn't lecture. She didn't even glare the way I expected. She went silent. And somehow that was worse. For the first few days, I kept waiting for Dad to bring up our conversation again, to knock on my door, sit on the edge of my bed, and do the thing he used to do when I was younger. Run a hand through his hair and say, "Okay, let's talk. Really talk." But he didn't. He stayed quiet too. Meals became brief, mechanical events where the only sounds were forks scraping plates and Zoe trying, awkwardly, desperately, to fill the silence with comments about school, her friends, upcoming tests. Lena never addressed me directly, not once. If she needed something, she'd say, "David, could you tell her to wash the dishes?" Or, "Zoe, tell your sister that her laundry is still in the dryer." Every indirect word was a small cut, and each day those cuts accumulated until my whole chest felt raw. Alex stopped coming over. At first, I didn't understand why. He loved our family gatherings. He loved cheering me up after tense dinners. But then he called one evening, voice tight and thin, like he was holding back more than he was saying. Listen, Lena sent me a message." My stomach dropped. "What kind of message?" "A long one." He paused. "She said I'm undermining her authority and setting a bad example. She accused me of encouraging you to disrespect her." "That's insane." My voice cracked, humiliated rage burning behind my ribs. "She hates that we're close. You know she does." "I know," he sighed. "But look, she's escalating. She's blaming me for everything now. I think it's better if I stay away for a bit, just until things cool down." "No!" The word burst out of me before I could stop it. "No, Alex, please, don't do that. Don't let her push you away again." He was quiet a long time. I'm tired," he finally said. "I'm tired of fighting with her. I'm tired of Dad asking me to be the bigger person. I love you, but I can't fix this for you anymore." His voice broke on that last sentence, and something inside me broke with it. After we hung up, I sat on the floor beside my bed and cried until my throat felt scraped raw. Dad tried once more to mediate. One night after dinner, he stood in my doorway, hand resting on the frame like he wasn't sure he was allowed to enter. "Emma, please, apologize to Lena. It will make everything easier." "Easier for who?" I asked quietly. "For all of us." "No, Dad, just for you." He flinched, like my words had weight. I pushed on. "She humiliates me in front of everyone. She makes rules just for me. She treats me like a problem you keep failing to discipline, and you keep letting her. That isn't fair." But we both knew it was. His voice cracked. "Lena helped me through the hardest time of my life, Emma. She held me together after your mother died. You don't understand what she's done for this family." I stared at him, stunned. "I am part of this family," I said softly. "Why doesn't that seem to matter anymore?" He closed his eyes, like he couldn't bear to look at me. And that hurt more than anything Lena had ever said. The tension boiled over again the night I overheard Lena talking to Dad in the living room. Their voices were low, but I could hear every word. "She needs discipline, David," Lena whispered harshly. "If she won't respect this house, she shouldn't live in it. Send her to your parents for a few months. It worked for me when I was her age." Dad didn't immediately disagree. He didn't say, "Absolutely not." He didn't defend me. He hesitated. Again. And that hesitation, those 2 seconds of silence, were enough to tell me everything. They were actually considering sending me away. Like I was a problem to relocate. Like I was clutter to reorganize. Like I wasn't family at all. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My eyes burned. My throat tightened. Every memory of Mom came crashing down on me like a wave I couldn't fight. She would have never let this happen. Never let anyone erase me. Never let anyone push Alex out. Never let anyone replace us. The realization left me shaking. I wasn't safe in this house anymore, not emotionally, not mentally. Something had to change. And for the first time, running didn't feel weak. It felt like survival. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a pressure cooker. Every conversation, every interaction, felt like it was building toward an inevitable explosion. I could feel the tension in my bones, in my breath, in the way I had to force myself to get out of bed every morning. Dad's guilt had settled deep into his bones, and I could see the way it twisted his every action. Lena had become the center of everything, and he was so desperate to keep the peace that he let her dictate the terms of our home. I saw it in the way he smiled at her, soft and tired, as though he were afraid to look too deeply into his own choices. But when he looked at me, his eyes always seemed full of doubt. There was no longer certainty there, no belief that his family, our family, was worth fighting for. And then the rules, the restrictions, the rules that didn't apply to Zoe but only to me. It started small. Lena started monitoring my phone. She restricted my car privileges until I showed more responsibility. A 9 p.m. curfew on weekdays and 10 p.m. on weekends, except Zoe could stay out as late as she wanted. When I pointed out the glaring unfairness, Lena's response was simple. "You've proven that you can't be trusted. You need to show more respect for the family rules." And Dad? He sat quietly on the couch, looking at the floor, his hands folded in his lap. He didn't challenge her. He didn't defend me. That was when I realized that Dad had already made his choice. A week later, Alex called me again. His voice was quieter this time, tinged with something I couldn't place. I need to talk to you. About what? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. I overheard something from Lena. I tensed. What did she say? She's trying to drive a wedge between you and Dad. She's been telling him that you are the problem, not her, that you can't handle living here. I could hear Alex's breath hitching. She told him she's considering sending you to your grandparents. I froze. Alex, please tell me you're joking. No, I'm not. His voice cracked. She's serious, Em, and she's getting worse. She says she doesn't feel safe in her own home because of you, that she can't live with someone who undermines her authority. My stomach churned. It was happening again. History was repeating itself. Just like when I was younger, when my parents had discussed sending Alex and me away to live with our grandparents so Dad could focus on Mom's illness. But this time, it wasn't just a suggestion. It was an ultimatum. Lena was pushing me out of our home, and Dad was silently letting her. The straw that broke me came 3 days later, during one of our brief and increasingly uncomfortable dinners. The atmosphere was thick. Dad barely spoke, Zoe played with her food, and Lena kept offering forced smiles as if pretending nothing was wrong would make it all disappear. Then Lena said something that almost made me choke on my drink. You know, Emma, she started, her voice cool. You're going to have to start acting your age. You're too old to be relying on Alex all the time. You're not a little girl anymore. Maybe you should think about what kind of future you want. I looked at Dad, waiting for him to step in, waiting for him to remind Lena that Alex and I had always been close, that we'd needed each other, that our bond wasn't unhealthy or wrong. But he didn't. He just looked down at his plate and let her continue. She's right, Lena said, addressing Dad now. She's a teenager. She should be learning independence, not depending on her brother for emotional support. That was when I snapped. I'm not your daughter, Lena, I said, my voice trembling with restrained anger, and you don't get to tell me what I need. You're not my mother, and you never will be. Lena's face turned red. Don't you dare? But I wasn't done. You've made my life hell since you came into it. You've undermined my relationship with Alex every chance you've gotten. And now you're trying to send me away like I'm just some inconvenience you don't want to deal with. I was shaking, but the words kept coming, like a dam had finally broken. You've always made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I wasn't welcome. I don't care anymore. I'm done. There was silence. Dad's eyes were wide, shocked, his hands clenched into fists on the table. Lena's jaw tightened, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. She stood up abruptly, throwing her napkin on the table. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. You have to respect me. You all do. With that, she stormed out of the room, leaving Dad and I staring at each other, the air thick with everything that had never been said. I couldn't even look at him anymore. I couldn't, because I knew. I knew it wasn't just Lena who was the problem. It was Dad, too. He was complicit. He had let it all happen. That night, after Lena's explosion, I retreated to my room, closing the door behind me as if that would shield me from everything. From her, from Dad, from the pain of realizing that the father I once trusted with everything was gone. And there, sitting on the edge of my bed, I felt the weight of the last few years crashing down on me. All the decisions I had tried to ignore, all the hope that one day things would go back to normal. But things would never go back. Not now. The worst part? I didn't even know what to do next. I didn't know how to fix this, but I knew I couldn't stay here anymore. After that night, the house transformed into something unrecognizable. It wasn't a home. It wasn't even a battleground. It was a void, a hollow, echoing space where conversations went to die, where no one made eye contact, where footsteps in the hallway felt like warnings rather than signs of life. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the stairs, the dripping faucet, seemed louder than our actual voices. And Lena, her silence became its own punishment. She didn't yell. She didn't confront me. She simply erased me, like I didn't exist. If she needed something done, she told Zoe. If she wanted to complain, she told Dad. If she wanted to criticize me, she waited until she thought I wasn't listening. You see, she'd murmur to Dad in the kitchen, she doesn't respect this house. She doesn't respect me. How can we live like this? Dad never said anything back loud enough for me to hear, which meant he wasn't defending me, which meant he agreed. One night I overheard them arguing again, voices low, tense. She needs consequences, David, Lena whispered fiercely. She's out of control. She's grieving, Dad said, sounding exhausted. You knew this would be difficult. She's had years to adjust, Lena snapped. I'm done being the villain in my own home. My heart twisted at that. Villain? She wasn't just rewriting our family, she was rewriting herself into the victim. Then she said the words that broke me. I can't live like this anymore. Either she goes or I do. A cold, clean silence followed. Dad didn't answer immediately. He hesitated. Again, always. And in that hesitation, I felt something inside me finally, irrevocably collapse. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound as tears streamed down my face. I backed away from the hallway slowly, climbing the stairs in a blur, my breathing uneven, my chest tight. He was choosing her. Maybe not out loud, maybe not intentionally, maybe not consciously, but in every silence, every apology he made on my behalf, every time he refused to stand up to her, he chose her. Not me. Not the daughter he raised, not the girl who lost her mother and clung to him and Alex like lifelines, not the child he once promised to protect. I curled up on the floor of my bedroom, arms wrapped around my knees, my mother's photo album pressed against my chest. I flipped it open and ran my fingers over the pictures. Mom laughing on the beach, holding me in her lap, pressing a kiss to Alex's forehead. She looked warm, soft, strong. Everything Lena wasn't. Everything Dad had forgotten. I whispered the words I was too afraid to say aloud. Mom, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stay here without losing myself. My voice broke. I don't think Dad wants me anymore. That was the darkest moment of my life. Not the fights, not the explosions, not the humiliations, but the moment I realized I wasn't wanted in my own home. Not by Lena, and not by the father who once promised he'd never let me go. The next day, I moved through the house like a ghost. Zoe tried to talk to me, but her words felt distant, muffled, like they were underwater. Emma, please don't be mad at them, she said softly. Mom really does care about you. She just doesn't know how to show it. I didn't respond, because I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, the only thing that would come out would be a sob. That night, I realized something terrifying. I couldn't stay. Not one more day, not one more hour. If I did, I would disappear completely. Not physically, but emotionally. Piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the girl Mom raised. But leaving felt like betrayal. Leaving meant abandoning Zoe. Leaving meant giving Lena exactly what she wanted. Leaving meant giving up on Dad. Or maybe it meant choosing myself, even if he couldn't choose me. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall where my butterfly wallpaper used to be, before Lena painted over it. A metaphor, really. She'd erased the last thing Mom and I did together. She erased you too, a small voice inside me whispered. She's been erasing you for years. And Dad let her. My chest ached. I felt like I was suffocating. I made my decision in the middle of that suffocating silence. I had to leave. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. It wasn't courage, it was survival. And survival doesn't wait. The turning point didn't feel dramatic at first. It didn't come with shouting or slamming doors or some grand confrontation. It started with a single choice, one I thought would finally give Dad and me a chance to talk honestly, without Lena hovering like a storm cloud waiting to break open. I texted him. Can we talk? Just us. Somewhere neutral. He replied almost instantly. Yes, the park? The park was symbolic, our childhood place, where Dad pushed Alex and me on swings, where he taught us how to skip stones, where he held our hands after Mom died and said, we'll get through this, together. I clung to that memory as I walked there. The moment I saw him sitting on the bench, hands clasped, shoulders hunched, I felt a painful mixture of hope and dread. His face looked older, worn down by the weight of trying to keep two worlds from colliding. Emma, he said softly, thank you for meeting me. I sat beside him, leaving a careful, aching distance between us. Dad, I said, I need you to listen, really listen. Not as Lena's husband. Not as a man trying to keep the peace. As my father. His throat bobbed. I'll try. So I told him everything. Every memory Lena erased. Every time she belittled my bond with Alex. Every time she singled me out. Every time he failed to protect me. Every moment I felt pushed aside in the house where I used to feel safe. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I spoke quietly. Because sometimes quiet truth is the sharpest kind. At one point, I felt my voice crack. When you didn't shut down her idea of sending me away, I realized I couldn't stay. Not if you didn't want me there. His face crumpled. He covered his mouth with one hand, blinking fast. I never wanted you to leave, he whispered. God, Emma, you're twisting everything. I was just trying to calm her down. I didn't mean it. But you didn't deny it, I said, meeting his eyes. You didn't choose me. Silence. He shook his head, voice thick. I'm sorry. I should have defended you more. I didn't realize how deep this had gone. I thought things would get better with time. They didn't, I said. They got worse, and I'm breaking, Dad. You don't see it, but I am. He reached out, hesitantly brushing his fingers against my hand. I'll talk to Lena, he promised. I'll fix this. I'll tell her to back off. I'll do anything. For a moment, I believed him. For a moment, I saw the father who once held my world together with sheer love and stubbornness. For a moment, I felt hope. That hope lasted exactly 1 hour, because when we returned home, Lena was standing in the living room, holding something in her hands. My diary. Open. Pages bent. Ink smudged. My private thoughts exposed. You went through my room? I whispered, horrified. She didn't even look ashamed. I was cleaning, she said coolly, and I found this. Interesting reading. Dad froze beside me. Lena held up the diary like evidence. You hate me. You hate Zoe. You've been poisoning this house for years. You think I'm the enemy, but I'm the only one trying to keep this family together. That's not true, I said, shaking. Those were private thoughts. Oh, please, she snapped. A real daughter wouldn't write these things. I never said I was your daughter, I shot back. Her face twisted. Then the words came, words that would finally shatter everything. I can't live with someone who despises me. David, she either apologizes or I'm leaving. You need to choose. Time stopped. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. My breath caught in my chest. Dad looked between us, conflicted, wounded, lost. And then he paused. Just a moment, a breath, a hesitation. But that hesitation was enough. I felt my world split open. All the hope I'd rebuilt in the park dissolved into nothing. I didn't wait for his answer. I didn't need to hear it. I ran upstairs, grabbed a duffel bag, shoved clothes inside with shaking hands, grabbed my mother's photo album, my charger, a jacket. My phone buzzed. Alex, I'm outside, come on. Dad stood at the bottom of the stairs as I came down, his voice strangled. Emma, wait. I couldn't look at him. You already chose, I said quietly. Zoe was crying. She tried to reach for me. Please don't go. Please, Emma. My voice broke. I have to. I walked out the door and didn't look back. That was the moment I stopped being the child trying to hold everyone together. That was the moment I chose myself. When Alex pulled away from the house that night, I watched the place I grew up in shrink in the rearview mirror. Familiar windows, familiar porch lights, familiar bricks. And yet it felt like I was watching a stranger's home disappear, not my own. I didn't cry. Not then. I think I had run out of tears. Alex glanced at me a few times during the drive, but he didn't push. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything he already understood. When we reached his apartment, he helped me carry in my bag without asking questions. He didn't lecture me. He didn't try to convince me to go back. He just sat beside me on the couch and said, "You're safe here, as long as you need." And for the first time in years, I felt like someone wasn't asking me to change who I was in order to stay. The fallout started the next morning. Missed calls from Dad. Text after text after text. Voicemails that began calm, then cracked, then tilted toward panic. Emma, please call me. Where are you? Alex, tell me she's with you. Emma, honey, please, let's talk. And then, the one that broke my heart a little. I choose you, I do. Please come home. But the problem wasn't his choice now. The problem was that he didn't choose me then. And that failure had already detonated everything. I didn't answer. Not yet. Not while my hands still shook, remembering how long he hesitated. Within 2 days, Zoe reached out. Her messages were short, frantic. Dad isn't okay. He's been drinking. He keeps fighting with Mom. Please just talk to him. He misses you. Each text felt like guilt wrapped in affection. Zoe wasn't trying to manipulate me. She just didn't understand the depth of what had happened. How could she? Lena had never erased her. But I couldn't go back just because the house was crumbling without me. I wasn't the patch for their broken marriage. I wasn't the sacrificial layer of emotional insulation. And I refused to be the person everyone relied on to fix things just because they didn't want to confront the real problem. My father's desperation escalated. One evening, he came to Alex's apartment unannounced. He pounded on the door harder than necessary, his voice thick with frustration and grief. Alex answered before I could stop him. David, he said carefully, maybe you should... This is your fault, Dad snapped. You've always encouraged this dependency. You're making her think she can run away from her responsibilities. My responsibilities? I stepped into the doorway, my voice sharper than I expected. Dad, I'm not a problem to manage. He turned to me, and the look in his eyes nearly shattered me. Emma, please, he whispered. Just come home. We can talk. We can fix this. I'll set boundaries. I'll talk to Lena. I'll do whatever you want. But I saw the panic beneath his promises, the fear of losing both his daughter and his marriage. The war he'd been trying to avoid for years was finally erupting, and he didn't have the tools to fight it. "Dad," I said softly, "you should have chosen me before I had to walk away." His face crumpled. "Don't do this," he said. "Don't leave me like this." That word, leave, hurt more than it should have. "I didn't leave you," I said. "You let me go." He flinched like I'd struck him. Alex stepped between us gently. "David, she needs space. Let her breathe." Dad stared at him with betrayal. "You're taking her away from me." "No," Alex said quietly. "She came to me because you stopped fighting for her." Dad's mouth opened, then closed. He turned away, shoulders shaking, and left without another word. I closed the door and felt the weight of the moment settle deep in my chest. Meanwhile, Lena reached out too, just not how I expected. She emailed me. It wasn't an apology. It was a justification disguised as vulnerability. She wrote about how hard it was to step into a ready-made family, how she felt like she was competing with a ghost, how she gave up dreams of having more kids to focus on raising me and Zoe. And then she ended with, "I truly believe you need professional help for your attachment issues to Alex. One day you'll see I was right." I didn't respond. You can't build a bridge with someone who insists the fire is your fault while they're still holding the match. Dad's life continued to unravel. Zoe kept me updated despite my gentle boundaries. Mom and Dad fight every night. Dad keeps saying he wants things to go back to how they were. Mom says he's choosing you over her. He's sleeping on the couch now. Their marriage had stood on the illusion that I would adapt, that I would shrink myself small enough to fit the version of family Lena wanted. But when I stopped shrinking, the illusion shattered, and all the consequences fell on the people who created the problem, not on me. Meanwhile, my life, quietly, slowly, I began to rebuild itself. I transferred schools, got a part-time job, made a friend who understood grief, learned how to cook something other than boxed mac and cheese, talked to Alex about college, about the future, about life beyond this year. Hurt didn't disappear overnight. Neither did guilt. Neither did the longing for the dad I used to have. But every day, a little more light came in. Every day, I felt a little more like myself. Every day, I realized I hadn't destroyed my family. They had destroyed themselves. All I did was stop letting them destroy me too. If you had told me months ago that I would begin to heal away from my own home, I wouldn't have believed you. I used to think healing meant reconciliation, meant everyone sitting at the same table again, smiling, pretending nothing had broken. But healing isn't pretending. It isn't going back. It isn't sacrificing yourself to keep other people comfortable. Healing is choosing the version of yourself that's been buried under years of guilt and silence. Living with Alex hasn't magically erased all the pain. There are nights when I still stare at the ceiling, wondering if Dad is eating dinner alone, wondering if Zoe still cries when she passes my empty room, wondering if things could have been different if I had just bent a little more. But those thoughts no longer control me. Instead, I think about the new life I'm building, and waking up early for my job at the bookstore, late night tea with Alex on the balcony, laughing with Mia in English class, planning for college, my college, not the one Dad imagined. Feeling that slow, steady warmth of becoming someone I'm proud of. And the biggest shift? I don't feel guilty for choosing myself. Not anymore. I used to think families were unbreakable, that blood meant responsibility, that history meant loyalty, that parents were incapable of hurting their children in ways that left permanent cracks. But I learned something else. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away before you disappear completely. Dad still reaches out. Some messages are calm. Some are messy and emotional. Some sound like a man trying to rebuild something he didn't realize he'd neglected until it fell apart. One day, maybe we'll talk, really talk. One day, maybe he'll understand the damage that happens when silence becomes a pattern. One day, maybe I'll understand him more too, his grief, his desperation, his fear of choosing wrong. But reconciliation isn't the goal anymore. Growth is. Safety is. Peace is. Right now, my life is quiet, steady, and mine. And maybe that's the lesson I needed to learn. Family isn't made of the people who share your house. Family is made of the people who protect your heart. I'm learning to protect my own now, and that might be the most important thing I will ever do.